Hello and welcome everyone to a new Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era video. In this one, we are going to be tearing up every single Grove unit available. So, Grove when it comes to units ended up being a little bit weak. And yeah, we're going to be seeing as we tier. So, we're going to be starting off pretty strong when it comes to Grove actually. Well, first off is we have the trusty Faun, a range unit with pretty low quantity. Their growth and their starting counts are actually not really that high, so you're not going to be able to like get them, like that many of them. That means that some of the bonuses like Shadow Blades and Drums of War are going to be not as useful in them either. However, there's still like a really good unit that do a lot of good work. Shooters on the low tier make the faction far more playable across the board. You can go into objectives like Maria's Altar, Trophy Hunter Dens, and they're just gonna, pew pew until everything dies. The basic one is gonna be B tier. Trusty good unit. Then if you upgrade to Von Archer, you're gonna be gaining the Sharpshooter buff, which is gonna be letting you shoot without range penalty. That makes them a lot better and puts them into A tier. Now, next up is we have the Faun Warrior. Faun Warrior I actually really like. However, they're pretty easy to bleed. Like, one wrong step, like one time you get morale down and suddenly your entire plan falls apart. So they're very hard to use. And because their quantities are so low, you can't really afford to like bleed that many of them. So as a strategy, it kind of like is not super reliable, despite them being pretty good. I will put them in high B tier. However, use them at your own discretion. I would say that Faun Archers are correct in 90% of the times. And, Faun Warriors are only correct in like 10% of scenarios. And in those scenarios, it's also like a little bit questionable. So, yeah, there we go. Then next up is the Hoplet. So the Hoplet is a basic flying creature that, hits and is alright. Hoplet on its own is kind of like of a unit. You don't get that many of them. They don't really feel like a power stack. They don't really feel like a lot of meat either. They're kind of like, they don't really matter. They're just like a C tier. They're just there. However, when we get to Hoplet upgrades, we are getting some of the best units in the game that you can do ridiculous things. Let's start off with the Dust Hoplet. It is a solid S tier, straight up right off the bat, because they like just carry games on their own. They have an ability called Bloom. Whenever you cast Bloom, you're going to be getting 2 power for that current turn for 1 focus charge. It doesn't seem like very impressive, however, there's like so much synergy on Grove with the Hoplet. One is going to be the fact that you're getting free focus charges immediately at the start of the fight with Expert Murmuring. 2 is the fact that you're usually going strong connections, which is going to be increasing all of your stats for the rest of the fight by 1 whenever you use any focus. And using the Bloom immediately like triggers these strong connections. So basically they're just like printing out stats like to no end at the beginning of every single fight. It lets you snapshot like a very strong avatar, it lets you cast like a big fireball, and it lets you like do fights in the early game that otherwise would be like literally impossible. So yeah. For that reason, they are one of the most important units and the best units that the faction has to offer. The Dawn Hoplet is also in the same tier. They, instead of like being able to bloom, they have like 1 time in the battle usage ability, and that will give you 1 focus charge. So instead of spending focus, you're gaining focus, but this also triggers strong connections, giving you even more stats. So you can like, bloom, then use a Dawn Hoplet to get like recharge and then bloom again. And then, like by that point, you're having like 20 power on like a level 3 hero. Very ridiculous stuff. Also, if you go Primal Magic, you can save that power buff for an extra turn as well. The secondary, the subskill, the first subskill for Primal Magic will get you 1 duration on all of your friendly creatures' effects. And that actually works on the Hoplet, so you can actually like extend the duration of the buff, which is also really amazing. Next up is we have the Golem. Ooh, that's an alert. I'm sorry, that shouldn't happen. Probably people are traumatized about this on stream already, but that will go away soon. So, next up is the Iriads. Ariads are basic golem units that are there just to be tanky. They can awaken to become like a real unit with a limited retaliations, a little bit more speed, a little bit more HP. However, the awakening is free focus, and usually Grove has better places to spend their focus, so they're usually going to be just like a slow golem. They are just a beater unit. You get them in order to stay alive, in order to do all the shenanigans that you're going to be doing, which is going to be casting spells, blooming, you know, like you're using very squishy army in order to get your package rolling with like power scaling and stat scaling throughout the fight, and golems are there to fill in the space so you don't actually just straight up die, you know? You also have a very good law that will be increasing their maximum HP, so you can get these guys to be ridiculously tanky. It is pretty good. Then there's 2 upgrades. The Crystal Ariad is going to be having like a defensive death stare. Whenever you hit these guys, you're going to be losing 1 flat unit of any unit that is tier 5 or below. That makes them like actually pretty hard to focus, pretty hard to kill. And because of that, they become A tier. They're just really solid guys that will just sit there and exist. And sometimes that's all you need. Actually, very oftentimes in Grove, that's really all you need. And they do the job, and they do the job well. The Fungal Ariad, I would say, is a little bit worse. They have like a little bit of tankiness, but that little bit of extra tankiness is kind of like reserved behind the focus charges that you will not really be able to spend that well. Because they're going into your blooms on whatever else. So they do notably have an aura of people dealing minimum damage around them, which is useful but doesn't make them better than the Crystal Ariad, in my opinion. Next up is we have Naiads. Naiads are very weird because they're pretty good units individually, but they don't really like find a spot for themselves inside like the meta and the way that the faction flows. Because if you're going to be building them, and like using them as a power stack, they're actually like not strong enough on their own in order to like be that power stack that you need. And if you're like building just through them for something, then you just have like a few of them and you don't really feel like they matter. So Naiads are, in my opinion, like just good units that don't have a place in the current meta. We're gonna be putting them in B tier. And honestly, these upgrades, they almost never happen. When upgraded if they awaken, they actually get to like move every single turn and then shoot from a different position. They also don't get blocked by range attacker, by blockers. They can still use their range abilities. They get the nimble bonus. They're alright. Because they're good individual units that I actually I will put them in B tier. However, they're pretty, I haven't found a space in the faction for them yet. And I haven't actually seen other people do that. Like, Valone, the rank 1 player, ended up like playing them somewhat. And, it was a catastrophe. Like, they just didn't do anything and he just fell apart. So, people are experimenting. People are trying. Very respectable. But they don't have a place yet. Next up is the Herbmancers. The noob trap of the faction, because you can build them day 1, building tier 5 units on day 1, let's go! But they are way too slow, their growth is too low, they don't really function as a power stack. If you committing to them is, you're gonna be spending like 1,000,000 wood, and if you're gonna be committing that 1,000,000 wood into Herbmancers, building out anything else is gonna be hard. And once again, they're also not gonna be carrying your game. So investing into something that will fall apart, not do enough, is not good. So I would say that these slow units with very low utility are actually C tier. I don't know, I always hate having them in my army. Whenever I go through sprint and I get Herbmancer boxes, I'm like, ugh. Whenever I'm like playing other templates and I get their dwellings, I'm like, really, am I playing Herbmancers? They feel pretty bad. The Murmurmancer though is gonna be getting low A tier. So what he's able to do is he has a focus ability that lets you use your spellbook again. It will refresh your spellbook, letting you cast more times per turn. Now that can be very, very important. Thaumaturgy has a skill that lets you cast 1 more time is absolutely broken, and the only reason why mages are as good as they are. And Murmurmancer can even turn Mind Heroes into, It can basically give them thaumaturgy, which is very, very powerful. For that, Herbmancer gets an A tier, but they're a utility unit. You're not going to be power stacking them. You might just have like some around you, and they will do a pretty damn good job in providing you with extra utility. The Sporemancer is just like a direct upgrade of the Herbmancer. This is the route that you go if you're going to be power stacking them. And as I said, power stacking them feels pretty horrible, in my opinion. So they are C tier. Next up is we have the Quillin. So Quillins are basically the main power stack that you're going to be going for on this faction. Because, you know, they're actually like possible to build. Like, that's the best you can say. Their build path is horrible. You have to go for Hoplets, and you have to go for Naiads. You have to also hit up Golems. You also have to hit up a Mage Guild. Like, you have to build everything before you get the Quillin. So getting them in decent numbers when the build path is that hard, the unit better be amazing in that context. And unfortunately, well, I mean, they're good. They're really good. But they're not like build out everything along the way in your faction kind of good. So because of that, despite being the main power stack of the faction, they're getting B tier. The Thunder Quillins getting low A tier though. They are an amazing power stack with like some pretty cool abilities. If you awaken them, they get Swift Strike. Well, normal Quillins do too. But they also get this like Ball Lightning ability, which makes them like a lot more maneuverable. They can do some area damage. They have like very solid stats. They function really well. The Mist Quillin is like the major. They buff like your spell damage against targets. They're more like the utility Quillin, but like, I mean, utility Quillin, it doesn't really like make a lot of sense. Like, you know, here's my utility Dread Knight. Okay. Alright, I see. Yeah, you just had to like build out everything to get some utility units. It's just not really that great of an idea in my opinion. And next up is we have the Phoenixes. So the Phoenixes are a really cool unit. They look amazing. They actually feel pretty good to play with their cone attack. Their awakening ability makes them super fast. They have really good initiative. They are a good unit. But remember everything that I said about Quillin and the build path? Well, Quillins are a prerequisite for Phoenixes. So you're building everything all the way down to the Quillin, and then you get to the Phoenix. It is so hard to build. Double building them is, you know, like such a struggle. Single building sometimes is like somewhat possible, but like it's not good enough because you don't get enough of them. Honestly, it feels like they should have like a growth of 2, but that might be a little bit busted. Anyway, I would put them in high B tier. Then the Flaming Phoenix. So the Flaming Phoenix has like one of the most suppressive abilities in the game, and that is Heat Wave. Heat Wave will not only like remove all of the opponent's buffs, it will also remove all of the debuffs from you. So this like debuff and buff economy is like one of the most important like game design things about Olden Era. Because like the power scales your duration, and also power scales the duration amplification, to speak, you know? Like, based on your power, you're gonna be able to remove like a certain amount of duration from buffs, or add a certain amount of duration to your buffs, or remove a certain duration from your debuffs. So just bypassing all of this like buff-debuff economy that is then scaled by power is very, very good. Like, they are probably the best unit to have in low quantity. If you have like a power stack of them, then the opponent has to like literally change the way that they play. And all of these benefits on a unit that is already like really solid in stats and is gonna be having like the best initiative, it's amazing. And next up is my favorite, the Energy Phoenix. I don't think they're actually as good as Flaming Phoenix in many scenarios. However, they have like something really cool where they're going to be healing based on the amount of damage that they took. I believe that all the damage that they take will be healed up over like the coming 4 turns. So basically, if the opponent cannot burst them down and you have like a good enough amount of them, they're actually literally immortal. They just regenerate everything. And I have won games before just based off of infinite HP. Just because the opponent was not able to kill them in a single turn means that they could not kill them at all, ever. And that was a very impressive playstyle. However, that's like a threshold. Like in vampires, in Heroes of Might and Magic 3, you know? If you have enough vampire lords, then they do everything for free. And they are unbeatable and unkillable. But if they don't hit that sweet spot in terms of number, they're really just like, they fall apart and do nothing actually. So, and then the Flaming Phoenix becomes a lot better. So for Flaming Phoenix's consistency over the Energy Phoenix, I will rate them a tiny bit lower. They are very hard to build, very hard to power stack, but I got to respect their power and their coolness. I honestly think that they maybe should be A tier, but I find them so cool, so lovely, so precious that I will actually give them the S tier. So yeah. We have a faction with like some of the best early game things imaginable. You get like S tier units on day 1 that will like clear the entire map for you. And then you get like a bunch of resources and power, and then it's so hard to put it anywhere on this faction that will matter. All that you end up doing is just building out some golems so you can stay alive, so maybe your casting can actually like kill the opponent. It's a weird spot for growth to currently be in, but it's an interesting faction to play. They do well in formats where the army is external. So like in Jeebus Outcast or Vendetta, you know, you want to break into middle as soon as you possibly can, and then you're going to be getting army from just mid boxes, whatever the mid is going to be. In those templates, Growth does excellent because, you know, they cheat into middle early, they just get like 30 power, summon an infinite HP, infinite damage death robot avatar, they, you know, like get a few boxes going, and suddenly they're playing like a different faction and they're doing it better than the other factions would. So those formats, they perform super well. But in Exodus or Harmony, where you have to like actually build and nurture your army, you know, like build it up little by little, they just kind of fail. So because of that, it's, yeah, Grove is in a pretty particular spot. But I love the design and they feel good. I think they just need a little bit of a build path support, really. So yeah, that is the Grove unit tier list. I thank you all for watching. I'm addicted to Golden Era. I stream every day, almost, and for like 9 hours, and I'm climbing to rank 1. Currently rank 5, getting very close to rank 4. So make sure to catch me live on twitch.tv/LikeShav, and also make sure to like and subscribe if you like this content. See you next time. Bye bye.